Okay, we'll continue. Part two, the Battle of Hattin. Part two. Okay, so like where was I? I was saying that, that we have the siege of Tiberias going on. Saladin's forces are besieging Tiberias, and which fell, I believe, and so basically there's a big war console going on between the Crusader forces. Like Raymond was arguing that a march from Acre to Tiberias was exactly what Saladin wanted, and Superior was a strong position for the Crusaders to defend. Furthermore, Guy shouldn't worry about Tiberias, which Raymond held personally and was willing to give up for the safety of the kingdom. In response to this argument, and despite the reconciliation, remember internal court policies were remaining strong, Raymond was accused of cowardice by Gerard and Reynald, and the latter actually influenced King Guy to attack immediately. So Guy thus ordered the army to march against Saladin at Tiberias, which is indeed just what Saladin himself had planned, for he had calculated that he could defeat the Crusaders only in a field battle rather than by besieging the fortifications. Now, this is a very particularly interesting thing, and I would say this is the hinge factor, because it was. You have to understand during the Middle Ages, the Christian knighthood thing was a lot of it was based on chivalry, doing the right thing for honor and glory, literally, being chivalrous, being honorable, and safety a lot of times took a back seat to chivalry and honor. I mean, Sun Tzu, what's the author of the Art of War, would say, this was indeed foolish tactics, which they were. Sun Tzu in the Art of War always stressed that it's better to deceive the enemy rather than take them on frontally. One of his best known sayings was like Sun Tzu said that attack your enemy where he is weak, but defend where he is strong. Nevertheless, a lot of sometimes a lot of medieval battles were not like that. It was all about the knight getting on the horse, and no matter what force was in front of him, it was all about honor and glory and fighting fairly and being chivalrous. And that did not always work out well, particularly in this battle, because like it was. So King Guy felt he had to when Tiberius was being threatened, and when a danceable in distress, the wife of Raymond, I believe, what was her name? Well, I forget her name, but let's see. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. When Raymond's wife, as Shiva, was, when her, safety was at stake, what does any good Christian knight do? They ride into battle and save the damsel in distress. But like I said before, Raymond, was a little more shrewd and clever. He knew his situation. He said, listen, if anybody's prisoners, whatever, I just don't want the whole army to be at risk. But King Guy, ordered by, Gerard and Reynald, who said honor was at stake, chivalry is at stake. We must rescue the babe. We can't let the princess, be threatened. We can't let Christian Holy Land be threatened. We must defend with our honor and glory. So that was King. That's what the pretty much a hinge factor. King Guy's decision to march through the hottest hell desert all the way to Tiberias from the safety in Jerusalem. And, like I said, this is very important because you have to understand this is in July and this is in the desert. And I think the temperature may have been from 110 to 120 degrees. It's like literally almost, if you don't know what you're doing in the desert, if you don't know, the terrain, which Saladin did, or if you don't, more importantly, dress up appropriate for it, it's literally a death sentence. So, I remember reading so much about this. King Guy started his march of death to the battlefield, and you have to understand, to make matters even worse, marching with very little water, marching, most of the army being knights and being like men at arms wore, I'm not kidding you, wore the full armor. So it's, try to imagine how hard it is marching through, in July in the desert. that will be made a million times worse if you're wearing full-scale body armor, metal plate armor, which a lot of the knights did, and which a lot of the foot soldiers did, medieval armor. So I can't even begin to imagine, how tolerable that was. Now, on the other hand, like I said, Saladin, knew Saladin and many other, Muslim armies. They knew how treacherous the desert could be. They knew where all the water springs were. They knew how to preserve water to, prevent thirst from taking tragic consequences. And more importantly, Saladin and the rest of the Crusader, Muslim army, um, including the very powerful Mamelukes. The Mamelukes were considered like the knights of the Muslim army. No, not dressed in full scale armor, but Mamelukes were very strong horsemen. Very um, formidable warriors. They're actually raised from slavehood, Mamelukes. So the Muslim armies knew how to dress for the desert. They wore light clothing, but clothing too that would protect them from the treacherous sun. So they knew how to dress. They were better equipped for desert warfare, and of course, they knew the lay of the land, where to get water, how to conserve water, and so you can see right away in this desert warfare, and this is why Saladin, wanted to face. He knew he could defeat the Crusaders in a field battle rather than besieging the fortifications. Why? Because he has the home advantage. He has the advantage, um, in every way possible. Because you have the Crusader army, doesn't know the lay of the land. They're dressed in these ridiculously heavy metal plate armors, which makes the heat from the sun a million times worse. And they don't have a good strategy. That's just simply marching out to the doom, all for the sake of chivalry and honor. And of course, Saladin's Muslim forces, on the other hand, they were dressed appropriately for desert warfare, and they knew the lay of the land. But anyways, so you can see, you can begin to understand King Guy's Crusaders forces. The moment I can honestly say, this is my opinion that the moment, and a lot of other people feel this way too, that the moment they marched from their safety net in Jerusalem, their safety fortifications, the moment they marched out into the desert, um, it was pretty much a death sentence. They were defeated even before the battle took place because, it's our army's got to be in good shape to fight a battle. So the moment they left to march in the desert in all that hot armor, they pretty much lost the battle. I would say, like, after 6, 7 hours of marching that sun, they were probably already depleted halfway strength, if not even more. So, and so anyway, that gets to now. So the Crusaders began the march from Siparia on July 3rd. Raymond, led the vanguard, Guy the main army, and Balin, Reynald, and the military orders made up the rear guard. The Crusaders were almost immediately under harassment from the Muslim skirmishers on horseback. That's another attack that Saladin used. He constantly used horse archers to harass the main forces. So by noon on that day, the Frankish army had reached a spring in the village of Turan, some 6 miles away from Superior. Here, according to Saladin, the hawks of the Frankish infantry and his eagle of the cavalry hovered around the water. Now, let's see. I think I'm going to skip a little. It was still 9 miles to Tiberias. 9 miles to Tiberias. So therefore, with only a half day of marching time remaining, any attempt to leave the sure water source to seek the objective the same day, all while under the constant attack of Saladin's army, would be foolhardy. Okay. Anyway, when Saladin arrived from the taking of Tiberias, when Saladin arrived from the taking of Tiberias, and after the Frankish army left Turan, the Muslims began their attack in earnest. Saladin sent the 2 wings of his army around the Frankish force and seized the spring of Turan, thus blocking the Frankish line of retreat. This maneuver would get Saladin his victory. and you know, so yeah, I apologize if I kind of just went like boom, fast forward to like from the march to the battle, because I'm talking about the battle right now. And by the way, I wish I could present like battle maps and stuff, and that would probably give you such a better idea what the hell is going on, rather just listen to my voice if I could present battle maps. But like, unfortunately, I have like limited technology and limited funds at the time, so forgive me. You know, it's not going to be like, you know, History Channel, a documentary, but well, it's the best I can do. So, anyways, okay. So, like I said, you know, when Saladin's army, arrived and taken Tiberias, they began attacking Ernest. Saladin sent his two wings of the army around the Frankish force and seized the spring of Tehran, once again, thus blocking the Frankish line of retreat. And this maneuver would actually get Saladin his victory. In the ensuing struggle, the Frankish rearguard was forced to a standstill by continuous attacks, thus halting the whole army on the plateau. The Crusaders were thus forced to make camp surrounded by the Muslims. They now had no water. Oh, that's not good. Now had no water nor any hope of receiving supplies or reinforcements. And there was some famous historian who summarizes the situation of the Frankish army. They were, and I quote, they were closely beset as in a noose, while still marching on as through being driven to death that they could see before them, convinced of their doom and destruction, and themselves aware that the following day they would be visiting their graves. End quote. So, on the morning of July 4th, the Crusaders were blinded by smoke from fires that Saladin's forces had set to add to the Frankish army's misery. More guerrilla attacks from Saladin, um, through through which the Muslim cavalry pelted them with 400 loads of arrows that had been brought up during the night. Gerard and Reynald advised Guy to form battle lines and attack, which was done by Guy's brother Alamak. Raymond led the first division with Raymond of Antioch, the son of Bohemian the Antioch, while Balian and Josian III of Edessa formed the rearguard. While this was being arranged, 5 of Raymond's knights defected to Saladin and told him of the dire situation in the Crusader camp. Okay, looks like part 2 is coming to an end, so part 3 will be continuing in a minute.